There's been a pejorative word making the rounds in the community that I'd like to address. Carebear has been around for ages in other communities, but we need to look at the way it is and can impact us in Star Citizen. This video will address that, among other less savory trends in the game. It's important and in the best interest of all citizens that we promote a positive and welcoming community. We've seen in games like League of Legends and Call of Duty, where a toxic atmosphere is allowed to foment, that people leave the games and growth slows or even stops. For a game that is in its infancy, this is untenable. When a game gains a reputation for toxicity, new players are put off and less likely to become involved in the community, which means that they're much less likely to recruit their own social circle, and retention drops. Several things contribute to this toxicity: negativity, trolling and griefing, lack of interest in helping new players, and gatekeeping. Negative player attitudes and insults bring down everyone, and it makes it more difficult to find common ground. There are always people who are less likable, and we can't remove them from the game. We may even occasionally be them from time to time, but it's important to reduce those instances, and while we all have bad days, it's in our best interest to control and neutralize the negative responses to them, lest the negativity grow and spread. The game is already relatively difficult to get started in. Just pay attention to the chat during free fly events, new user posts in groups, Reddit, and watch videos made by established gaming channels trying out the game. Some, actually a lot, of the tribal knowledge that we use on a daily basis to enjoy or even just mitigate frustration in game and that we take for granted are completely unknown to the wider population of new players. This is exacerbated by the fact that there isn't any semblance of a tutorial. To aid in this, there are several great videos by content creators such as Board Gamer, Avenger, Morphologist, Noobifier, Ollie, Level Cap, and these help new players, so even if we don't want to take the time to babysit, we can guide players to them. If we want to be more involved, we can offer specific help in chat, make our own videos, link to Spectrum and Reddit guides, etc. One of the most controversial parts of the game is centered around griefing and trolling. We can't even decide on a common definition, and this is where the Carebears come in. There are extremes on both sides, and I argue that each of these sides is very wrong. We don't want an easy mode game with the ability to turn off combat or eliminate risk, because unless there is difficulty, risk, and work involved, the value of gameplay is empty. PvP sliders are antithetical to the Star Citizen experience. At the same time, the idea that, quote, it's a PvP game, so any technically feasible gameplay is legitimate, should also be off the table. We already know that the crime stat system is arbitrary at best, and not a one of us with any significant playtime has escaped the wrath of a crime stat bug. There are also significant errors which allow players to escape a crime stat, or at least any meaningful crime stat, and literally get away with murder. Incapacitating someone and dropping them with a tractor beam for a single example. The system is far from perfect, and while we can't always trust people to be their best selves, we can hold ourselves accountable to some sort of honor when making decisions about what kind of gameplay to engage in. Does the amount of time I'm investing in this activity correspond to the amount of time I'm costing other players? I'm looking at you, guy who nuked a ship meet. If the crime stat and death of a spaceman systems were effectively implemented, would I engage in this activity? If the only reason you're doing something bad is for the lulz and because there are little to no consequences, is it ethical behavior? Is there actually any benefit for me other than ruining someone else's enjoyment of something that I enjoy? Will I gain money or items or non-schadenfreude enjoyment? Is there any challenge or skill or other benefit to me? It's not that hard to shoot down a prospector. If not, then all you're accomplishing is wasting someone else's time, and time is money. You don't know what they have going on in real life, how much gaming time they have, or how long it took them to set up. You don't know how new they are, or whether they've even decided to back the game in the case of free fly events. While it's certainly not your responsibility to make everyone happy, do you really want to be the reason behind a person quitting or not even backing? I would define griefing as intentionally preventing others from having fun with no personal incentive, repeatedly killing someone so they can't leave an area, harassment, extortion and then breaking the contract, charging someone for safe passage and then killing them after they pay you. Just because you define something as a quote legitimate game loop doesn't necessarily make it worth it in the long run. Players who are invested in game loops outside combat are still a very important part of the community, and until the game increases the cost of griefing, I think we need to be especially conscious of whether or not we're contributing to the toxicity by enforcing our own definitions of quote fun or quote legitimate on the less combat inclined. All I'm asking for is to consider treating other players as people, because they are. The last pillar of toxicity is exclusivity and gatekeeping. Whether someone has invested $40 or $20,000, they're invested in the game just like you. Some people are playing on aging laptops, and some people are running $3,000 gaming monsters with Virpils and a cockpit setup. The game is already limited to a player base on PC only, and on top of that, the system requirements mean there's a higher than normal entry cap just to run the game, aside from time investment on learning how to play any of the game loops, let alone master them. Pushing players away by any means is bad for all of us because it removes future funding from not only that individual, but also from anyone they would have recruited and their subsequent recruits down the line. We all love the game or we wouldn't be here. And I just want to ask everyone to consider how their actions reflect on the community and potentially affect the long-term success of this game as a whole before acting in a way that has minimal short-term benefits and long-term negative outcomes. I welcome your input and I look forward to thoughtful and respectful discussion, even if we don't agree. Please consider subscribing if you found this to be useful, as I'm making more content regularly. Also, consider following me on Twitch and helping me reach affiliate. Thank you all for taking your time to listen and give your feedback. See you in the verse.